I never thought of myself as someone who's scared easily, but what happened the night I was left home alone has lived in my mind ever since. And telling it now, every detail comes back to me with such clarity that it almost feels like I am reliving. It started so ordinarily, with my parents deciding to go out for dinner with some friends, and they asked me if I was fine staying by myself, which of course I said yes to, because I was old enough. And truthfully, I liked the idea of having the whole house to myself for a while, free to do whatever I wanted without anyone interrupting me. But the strange thing about being home alone is that it always feels fun at first, and then slowly, gradually, it begins to sink in that the walls are quieter. The air feels different, and every sound seems amplified, and that night was exactly like that. Beginning with comfort and ending with something else entirely. Something I still cannot explain. I remember watching my parents' car back out of the driveway, the sound of their laughter fading with the engine, as the red glow of their taillights disappeared down the street, and then there I was, standing in the living room, with the door locked, the lights on, and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen filling the silence. And though I told myself this was normal, that I had nothing to fear, I still felt a little shift in the air, like the house exhaled the moment I was left alone, and I tried to shake it off with a laugh, telling myself I was being dramatic, because people stay home alone all the time, right? And nothing ever happens. But still, that little whisper of unease lingered in the back of my mind. I went about my evening, trying to make it as normal as possible, turning on the TV for background noise, grabbing some chips and a soda, and settling onto the couch with a blanket pulled up to my chin, telling myself this was perfect, that I'd enjoy my freedom while it lasted. But even then, I noticed how the house seemed bigger when I was the only one in it. The hallways darker, the corners heavier, with shadow, and every creak of the old wooden floor sounded like it belonged to something alive, shifting in the dark. Still, I pushed the thoughts away, scrolling on my phone, switching through channels, trying to lose myself in distraction. But it was only a matter of time before the first sound reached me. So subtle I almost convinced myself I hadn't heard it. A faint creak from upstairs, directly above where I sat, like a floorboard bending beneath weight, and I froze mid-bite, holding the chip halfway to my mouth, staring up at the ceiling with my pulse thudding in my ears. And for a long moment I listened, every muscle in my body stiff, my breathing shallow, until the silence returned and I laughed nervously, shaking my head, telling myself it was nothing, just the house settling like it always did. But deep down, something in me stirred, something primal that whispered it wasn't the house at all. I tried to ignore it, turning the volume up a little, forcing myself to focus on the movie, but not 20 minutes later, I heard it again, louder this time. Not just one creak, but a sequence, like footsteps moving slowly across the floor, in the hallway outside my bedroom upstairs, and the sound drained every bit of warmth from me, leaving only cold dread, and I stared at the ceiling so long, my eyes burned, waiting, hoping the noise would stop. But then, as if to prove I wasn't imagining it, there came a soft thud, like a door gently closing, and I felt my skin prickle, as though the air itself had shifted around me. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, but I knew the sounds of this house. I knew what pipes expanding and what settling sounded like, and this wasn't that. This was heavier, more deliberate, too human to ignore, and though my heart hammered against my ribs, I told myself I had to check, because what else could I do? Just sit there in the dark pretending nothing was happening. So I got up, every step toward the staircase heavier than the last, my feet dragging as though my body itself was resisting what my mind insisted I had to do. And when I reached the bottom of the stairs, I stared up into the blackness, my hand gripping the railing, my other hand clutching my phone like it might save me. And I whispered to myself that maybe I'd left a window open upstairs, maybe the draft had pushed a door shut, and that was all it was. And if I just went up there, I'd find something simple and ordinary, and laugh at myself for being so jumpy. But when I put my foot on the first step, the house seemed to hold its breath, and I swear I heard it then, faint but real. The slow drag of something moving across the floor above me, like fabric against wood, and I pulled my foot back so fast. The stair groaned in protest, and I stood there in the silence, my chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, and I thought about calling my parents, but I didn't want to sound childish. I didn't want them to cut their night short because of a noise in the house. So I just stood there, torn between courage and fear, until finally I backed away from the stairs and told myself I'd stay downstairs with the lights on, the TV blaring, and everything would be fine. Because whatever was up there, if anything was up there, I wasn't going to go looking for it. So I went back to the couch, curling under the blanket again. But now every sound in the house was magnified. Every tick of the clock, every hum of the refrigerator, every gust of wind outside, and I couldn't relax. I couldn't pretend anymore. I just sat there with my phone clutched tight in my hands, refreshing my social feeds over and over, glancing at the clock every few minutes, and listening, always listening, for that sound from upstairs. And eventually it came, not footsteps this time, but a knock, 3 slow knocks, deliberate, against the wall above me, and that was when I knew something was wrong. Terribly wrong, because no draft, no settling house, no ordinary explanation could account for that, and my mouth went dry as I whispered into the emptiness, "Who's there?" Even though I knew no one should answer, and yet, in the heavy silence that followed, I could swear I heard the faintest sound, like a voice, too quiet to make out, but close enough to freeze me in place. And that was only the beginning of the longest night of my life. But the night didn't stop with the knocks, and though every instinct screamed at me to run, I stayed frozen, unable to tear myself away from the living room as the silence thickened around me, the air heavy, pressing down on my chest like invisible hands, and I thought about bolting for the front door, even if it meant sprinting barefoot into the cold night. But when I finally worked up the courage and stumbled toward it, fumbling with the lock, my hands trembling so badly I almost couldn't twist the deadbolt, I yanked it open only to find it unmoving, as if something massive leaned its full weight against the door on the other side. And no matter how hard I pulled, no matter how much I cried out in frustration, it wouldn't budge. And the thought struck me in that moment that maybe I wasn't meant to leave. Maybe this thing, whatever it was, wanted me here, trapped with it, and that realization nearly sent me to my knees. But instinct drove me to try another escape, rushing toward the windows in the living room, fumbling with the latches, shoving with all the strength I had, but each one refused to give, sealed tight as though welded shut, and panic clawed at me as tears welled in my eyes, because this wasn't normal. This wasn't just me being scared, this was real, this was wrong. And as I stumbled toward the back of the house, toward the kitchen, where another door led to the yard, I felt it following, not in footsteps this time, but in the pressure of the air itself. A suffocating awareness that every movement I made was being tracked, observed, savored. And when I reached the kitchen and grasped the back door handle, twisting until my palm burned, I found it locked too. Not by any bolt I could see, but by something unseen, an invisible force that resisted me. And that's when I heard it again, that whisper curling through the silence like smoke, my name drawn out slow and deliberate. And though it was faint, I could tell it came from right behind me, inches from my ear, and I spun around with a scream, raising the knife I'd grabbed earlier. But the kitchen was empty. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence, and yet the fear didn't ease, it only grew. Because though I saw nothing, I knew it was there, just out of sight, waiting, and I stumbled backward until my back hit the counter, gripping the knife so hard my knuckles ached, whispering to myself that I was going crazy, that this couldn't be happening. But before the thought could settle, the lights flickered overhead, buzzing, dimming, before plunging the house into pitch darkness, and the only sound was my ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart, and thin footsteps, unmistakable this time, heavy and slow, crossing the kitchen floor toward me, and I pressed myself against the counter, my knife arm shaking violently as I swung blindly at the dark. But the footsteps stopped just short of me, so close I could feel the air stir against my skin, and then came the breathing, wet and ragged, inches from my face, and I squeezed my eyes shut, whispering, "Please, please, leave me alone." But the only response was a low chuckle, guttural, inhuman, that rattled through my bones, and when the lights flickered back on, the kitchen was empty again. No sign of anyone. No footprints on the tiled floor. Nothing ganned. That emptiness terrified me more than if I'd seen something standing there, because it meant it could come and go as it pleased, slipping between being seen and unseen, heard and unheard, and I realized then I couldn't fight it, couldn't outrun it, because it wasn't playing by rules I understood. Still, desperation drove me, and I bolted from the kitchen into the hallway, my bare feet slapping against the wood as I sprinted for the basement door, thinking maybe, just maybe, there'd be an escape through one of the small windows down there. But as I yanked the door open and stared down the narrow staircase, my breath caught in my throat. Because the darkness below wasn't normal darkness, it was thick, alive somehow, a blackness that seemed to breathe, pulsing faintly as if it had a heartbeat. And as I stood frozen on the top step, that same whisper rose up from the depths, louder this time, clearer, like dozens of voices all layered together. "Come down." And though every nerve in my body screamed at me not to, my foot twitched forward, as if pulled by invisible strings, and I had to grab the doorframe with both hands to stop myself from stepping into that suffocating void, yanking myself back with a sob as I slammed the door shut, pressing my weight against it, trembling from head to toe, because I knew if I went down there, I wouldn't come back, and I couldn't explain how I knew, but the certainty was absolute. And for a long moment, I stood there in the hallway, clutching the knife, tears streaming down my face, my body racked with shudders as I whispered over and over that I wanted my parents, that I wanted to wake up, that I wanted this to end, but the house answered me only with silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but waiting. And I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that the waiting was for me, for the moment when I would break enough to give in, to let it close the distance between us once and for all. If this true Home Alone horror story kept you on edge and made you think twice about the silence of your own house at night, don't forget to like this video to let me know you enjoy these terrifying tales. Share it with someone brave enough to listen in the dark. And subscribe so you never miss the next story that might just keep you up at night. And of course, leave a comment below. Tell me if you've ever had a chilling experience when you were home alone, because your story might just be the next one whispered here in the dark. And until then, keep your doors locked, keep your lights low, and sleep if you dare.